Boom, and we're live. Welcome to the show, Graham. Once say no, we should sort out this camera because it's only showing you.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I just had to put it in gallery mode. There we go.
No, you need to be present as well, otherwise I'm just talking to myself
Yes,
on
we
Martin's World.
yes we do, but now we have to fix it because I was thinking it would put us side by feckin' side, but it put us on top of each other.
That's like a Zoom call. That's like way too official. We know each other better than that.
I know, yeah. There we go. We're all sorted now. We got all the funky stuff sorted there in the background. So everybody out there, welcome along, and yeah, it's great to be back doing interviews. I'm delighted to be breaking the ice with Graham De Barra yet again. You were my very first interview, and guess you're the first one after this bit of a hiatus I had. So Graham, welcome back.
Thanks, Martin. I'm glad to have you back as well in the scene, because you were very active there for a long stretch of time. And I'm glad everything, at home is going good.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man, and long may that continue. But I suppose the reason why I'm having you back on here, not only just to break the ice, but you recently were up doing fucking God's work, I suppose, above there at Electric Picnic, yourself and a number of other volunteers with the Help No Harm organisation provided drug welfare services up there above an Electric Picnic. So that's what we're going to be chatting about here for the next while. If so, everybody, pull up the chair, get ready, and here we go. But before
Stories from the festival.
yeah, but before we get into the festival side of it, I suppose I just want to go back, which how, when, and why did Help No Harm get started, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So Help No Harm really was born out of like us graduating from college and becoming kind of an adult version of what we were doing all along. And at least for me, that was, and for yourself as well, that was Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And even that was kind of the adult version of like Legalize Cannabis Ireland or any of the kind of protests that we were doing down here in Cork. So having come out of college and finished the thesis on drug consumption rooms up in Ireland, and doing a small bit of work then kind of around Europe and Switzerland, and then getting an unpaid internship, a traineeship in the Council of Europe, specializing in human rights and drugs. All these were like just kind of small, short stints. And then thankfully, towards the end of that internship, there was some interest put out through the network that was Leap UK. So they put out a kind of invite saying there's this philanthropist. He's after setting up a cannabis is safer than alcohol political party in the UK, and then also Northern Ireland. So they had ran in some local election. The best counties, I suppose, were actually the 6 counties up north. They did better than all of the UK, all of England. I think they were doing at that point. So it was England and Northern Ireland. The kind of reasons for that could be like different. Like Tories were dominating at the time in England, and then in Ireland it was just kind of going maybe through a little bit of a shift where I suppose maybe more left parties were kind of getting into power. So they flew us out to Barcelona for a study research trip where we met basically like someone like the law people and who were like set up some of the clubs, defending some of the clubs and what the legal basis is for their arguments. We met in the parliament there as well, which was kind of cool, the Catalan parliament, not the national parliament. But even that then is its own story. Like they have their own laws in Barcelona. So then kind of a couple of nights go by and, the lads are all like dropping like flies once they kind of get stoned. I'm like pacing myself, waiting for the right moment. And eventually, I'm just sitting next to Paul Birch, the founder of Bebo, an estimated value of 800 million pounds, this just sitting next to this dude. I'm like, kind of like, well, you wanted me here. This is my opinion. I don't think cannabis is safer than alcohol would actually be a good suit for the Republic, because you're actually attacking another drug, which is everyone's kind of choice of drug. It's not really about being pro one thing and then anti another thing. It's about generally being pro choice. And the political party really was kind of, again, it was an idea that seemed it is probably something that's needed, but at the same time, it wouldn't be my number one, for me, the number one priority. Like we need community building. We need like what we were doing in SSTP in the college at the campus level. We need to do that like nationally, right? So we need to have like a group of professionals, people, adults, not just students, but also tag in with those guys as well at SSTP and do create like an NGO, a non-governmental organization, non-profit, and allow that to be the kind of vehicle to build that community. So he kind of goes grand, and we set up Help No Harm. We do a number of like radio interviews, media kind of things in Dublin for the following like week or months, like maybe like 6 weeks of this, just kind of creating the company, the brand, getting interest from people, connecting to different charities and groups, and just kind of learning and listening, like what is it that's actually needed. And it seemed that was needed. A lot of these charities, especially Dublin-based charities, are funded by the very people who have created the prohibition, the regime of prohibition. So they're very like muzzled, or it seems like there's very little they can kind of really talk about outside of like what's kind of the mainstream narrative. And the mainstream narrative at the time was Aoife Reardon had come forward with decriminalization in like 2014, 15. I think it was like 15. So it became something that these charities weren't afraid to talk about, but we would then kind of follow up after decriminalization and ask them like, so what's your opinion on regulating drugs? Like, what's your opinion on the supply aspect? And I mean, they would, even to this day, I don't think there's any one government funded organization or charity that actually supports like what we're doing, and supporting safe supply. So, and as well as that, they didn't really have much of a kind of national presence. They had a very strong local presence up in Dublin. We're not from Dublin, so we had no interest in entering the kind of competitiveness that kind of exists around like writing grants and getting government funding. So we just kind of did our own thing. We had this billionaire who's attributed all his success to giving up alcohol at the age of 23 and taking to cannabis. So this guy is just like, yeah, it's a could seem to be a good figure to kind of work with. And we continued for a number of months doing like different tours around the country. So we toured with Aoife Reardon, doing a decrim tour. That was very easy. A lot of people supported it.
Yeah.
And then we did more difficult ones like medical cannabis. Well, I think that's still a very easy one, medical cannabis. We're lobbying on this issue that patients deserve access, and that's what you guys do now with Patients for Safe Access. So it was kind of also like an early version of that. So it was kind of trying to also find its own identity, but try and do what all the principles that we grew up on believing and that we worked with, people like A. Rua Fitzgerald, like, going through the campus and stuff, and working with Howard Marks and doing all these like great events. So we pretty much do the Global Medical Cannabis Summit. We have big names like Tilray sponsor. We also kind of balance that out though with like some like herbalists who we bring over, like the first lady who won in the Supreme Court against the US, I think twice in California, for the right to grow for patients who are terminally ill. Valerie Corral. So like we had a very good like session that was like, it was sponsored, but it wasn't like dictated by sponsors. And that was always our principle. Like, we would never really be taking money and then being told what to do. But you'd be surprised, man. There'd be a lot of organizations and charities there that like, they that's exactly what they do. They get some funding, and then they don't really push the boat, and they're very happy just to do that one thing.
Yeah.
And like even as recent as like recently, man, like people are often telling me just to be quiet, like, and to just stop with these opinions and just stick with the easy ones like the decrim or whatever, medical cannabis. But I just can't seem to separate any issue anymore. Like it's all just under the same problem, and that's prohibition.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what Help No Harm like really advocated for, was to repeal prohibition in every single form that we could kind of work towards.
Yeah, I can remember that 2016 event actually, and if memory serves correct, that was where Mike Barnes actually, for the first time, publicly displayed the Barnes report. I know he might have released it beforehand, but that was the first public appearance he would have made after its release, and like that was a really great event. And we had a number of other events after that. There was a great display that Help No Harm done as well above in Dublin, and I think it was up in Grafton Street, wasn't it? When you dressed up a couple of people in prisoners. You had those. Or it was a Stephen's Green, I think that was actually.
Stephen's Green. That's a Support Don't Punish, and
Support Don't Punish.
There's a group called RAID. So they're like rehabilitation, but they're also like drugs and theatre and they just work towards like whether they're in recovery or not, I suppose. But there is one guy who was very viral. He went viral at the time. He was like a homeless rapper up in Dublin, and he was part of that group. But they were all equally like really, really just like able, willing, and interested in the arts. And that was a very interesting angle. So one of our partners, Citywide, put us in touch with them and said, these guys would be very good to do this with. And they came out, we got like uniforms, we bought like cages, and we basically just like, and the lads had like guitars and like harmonicas, and I'd like just the camera just recording it. And yeah, we just displayed a big banner as well, something along the lines of probably drug laws don't work or something like that, or maybe detailing the number of convictions there were for personal drug possession, which stands in its hundreds of thousands in Ireland alone. So just trying to get this out to the public in a way that was just non-intrusive. But we got shut down by the guards.
on that particular day, yeah. So someone else.
A lot of people passed, like Ivana Bacik passed, and she's now the head of the Labour Party, right, and she got a photo with us. So being located there was great, but it also attracted attention. Like just a random road traffic guard passed me, asked me for my license, and I didn't have a license to perform on the streets of Dublin. I didn't feel like that was really something that a citizen of Ireland actually needed, and kind of argued with him, and he kind of let us off. But at the same time, we were pretty much moved. Like the car and had the PA system was pretty much on the footpath, so we kind of had to move.
Yeah, that can definitely create a problem on a car on the footpath. As well, I suppose back then it wasn't illegal, but right now it is illegal to have a car on the footpath.
It was kind of like one of those things though, where like there was a lot of shit going on, because Stephen's Green, I don't know if anyone here is from Dublin, but it was doing a lot of the roadworks, completing the loop of the Lewis line. So there was like shit everywhere. Like it wasn't like we were obstructing the road. The road was closed anyway. Yeah. And we were just kind of occupying that street that was closed. But even that, he was like not happy with. And obviously, I mean, what he said, something like, "Oh, there's people impersonating guards. We got complaints."
That's
and
right.
was
Like,
that's just the security across the way in Stephen's Green Shopping Centre, just given out, like, just for no reason.
You had prisoners and doctors, wasn't it? Prisoners and doctors.
Yes, that's right. Nurse uniform, doctor uniforms. Yeah, prisoners. There was. Okay, to be fair, the lads do a play where they dress up as a pig and they have a Garda uniform.
Okay, all right. Oh yeah, maybe that might have did a small bit of offence to that.
Creative, it's creative independence, like creative freedom, like So, but they took very like poorly towards that gesture. I'm sure that's what it was.
I'm also being reminded here in the hot box from Mark McDonald out there that Vera spoke publicly for the first time at that event, and I think what drew her to that event actually was the Stanley brothers were over from Colorado, the creators of that Charlotte's Web. So I think that's when Vera got to meet them, and Mark is saying here that it was the first time that Vera got to speak publicly. So it's nice accreditation there for Helping Harm to have there. This was Vera turned out to be an absolute amazing warrior afterwards for the medical cannabis movement. And her daughter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and a number of patients, who kind of found their voice like through what either Help No Harm events or, as I mentioned earlier, Arua Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. In my eyes, is like the first patient that I knew, and he died, at age 22 from Ewing sarcoma, rare bone disease. But he was using cannabis medically for a number of years, right up to his death, when he was told he had a few months to live. So that was it for me. Like I knew, and then like this was the right thing to do. It's a shame that he just wasn't like, couldn't bless us with more years of his life and his presence to be able to, because he really was like very present when he was in the moment, and he could speak well. He was a stand-up comedian as well. He toured with Howard Marks with us. And but by the time then, other patients came forward, like definitely, obviously Tom Curran goes way back as well, but definitely like, it becomes more of an easier thing to kind of come out with, because there's already like a good bit of like the groundwork done in terms of just like support. And then Vera comes out and it's like this massive viral success, and every heart in Ireland is won over, and like only she was actually able to make that possible. We really just did our little tiny part, what I mean? But it was really Vera who got that, who got that kind of viral. But there's still so much work to be done on that front. It's not over just because of a successful campaign. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, definitely. When we've got a medical cannabis access program here in this country, where what we've got two patients now got access through it, and all the rest of them are still getting ministerial licenses. It's just, I think
Yeah.
actually there might be 12 now on the MCAP or something like that, but still there's a majority have the ministerial license, and the MCAP is still ineffective, seen as they exclude chronic pain. You know, like Amy Brown, for example, who's been a guest in the podcast, she still has to go through the ministerial license application because she has endometriosis and suffers with chronic pain as a result, and she's excluded. It's just like, imagine that being a patient and your condition's not good enough to be included on something when when you know that what you're looking for is effective, you know. So, there
Yeah.
certainly is a lot more to be done on that front. But I suppose just to take it
Yes.
back, that's how Help No Harm got started and all that. But when was it then that drug welfare became, particularly the festival drug welfare? When was that? When did that come on your radar?
It was actually, again, this kind of relationship we have with SSDP. It's like they're holding their
Uh-huh.
annual conference, we're holding this medical cannabis summit, but both are like bringing these like unbelievable experts into the country. And again, because there's no agenda like to get funding or money, like it's literally like anyone who's like stands out, where like these conferences are inviting them to
Hmm.
the colleges, to CIT, UCC, DCU, Galway. And one of the annual conferences, they brought over Katie McLeod,
Yeah.
and Katie was the founder, executive director, whatever, of two directors, I believe, of this organization called Chill Welfare. And this was a nonprofit based up in Scotland. And the other founder was from Sligo. So it was just like a very fun, kind of easy collab that we kind of started very early. Then where like SSDPers would send people out to the festival scene in the UK and would volunteer for like that summer. That was 2016. And then I kind of joined in about like late summer. I said, oh yeah, I'd love to head out and take a look. To be honest, I didn't really say like I'd love to head out and take a look. I was kind of like, sure, I'll take a look, as I have nothing else to be doing.
Hmm.
And I really, really took to it. Like I didn't know that I was going to, and I was really kind of a bit anxious about the whole experience, really, like,
Hmm.
because I didn't know would I be good at this. And yeah, like I was really out of my depths, like, because we had only been advocating for this, and then to actually kind of for the first time like do it like as an actual like job or role. Like even you're volunteering, but like you have to have skills. Like, so if you don't have a skill, you kind of like, and then you kind of question, what is my skill? And but you find yourself on the team, like you find what you do very well, and no one else can like really do that thing. So as long as you just kind of like stick to that one thing, whether it's like talking to people, administration, filling out the forms, whether you're just like just making like just making a count, just given like just like brawn and strength and carrying stuff, setting up the tents, and taking down again, driving, transport. Like there's so much there that like it's just waiting for people to do. And if you just do it at any one of those roles, you just very easily fit in, and everybody welcomes you. And you get to make a difference, and you see that difference then when you see people leaving the tent as to before when they came into the tent, and they're just like they're on different highs, they're on different trips, and that like the rest of their night is like not going to be as bad as whatever they were coming in with. And a lot of those problems, like what we faced at Boomtown that time, in August 2016 in Winchester, a lot of that ranged from so much UV sun exposure to like giving sun cream and soot cream and aloe vera out and water and hydrating people, as it was in the evening shifts, like the mid-morning, early morning shifts, where like people were coming in quite distressed, like
Hmm.
maybe they've had something personal like occur to them, and it's just coming out through a trigger, and like during a trip, or maybe they've lost their friend, but this is their first time going to a massive festival and they don't know what to do. They haven't made a plan. So you're hoping these like these like this advice will stick with people, and you're trying to get that advice out to as many people before the festival. Like make a plan with friends, have each other's numbers, know where to meet up if you get lost, and like bring good drugs with you. Don't rely on buying shitty drugs in the festival, because that's often a massive problem as well. A lot of young people, through impulse, their first time at a festival and their first time taking like a hard class A drug, and Sometimes it's too much, and sometimes it's not a desirable effect, and sometimes it's just a contaminated substance. That's often the case. So we're just kind of putting people back together and setting them kind of straight again. And there's just a really good team and people that you're always learning from because
Yeah.
everyone does a different skill. And so you're just completely like you level up during like a 4-day festival, like nothing else could have ever taught you in
Mm.
the classroom or even in the conference, you know?
Yeah, well, also thank God for the SSDP because if it wasn't for the SSDP, we probably would never have learned about Katie McLeod and chill welfare, or at least not until a bit
Yeah,
later on when they came out as part of. I think they were featured in the Vice documentary that were recording the Loop as well in 2017. We might have
that's
got
right. And we were
exposed from it
there.
then. Yeah, you were there that time. I missed that year. I was there the previous year and the year
It was
after
an interesting
when
one,
the Loop
yeah.
got
Like,
withdrawn. But because of SSDP, I went to Liverpool. I went to a Hot Topics conference, and that's where I got to meet Katie McLeod for the first
oh yeah,
time.
that's a
And
brilliant event, yeah.
yeah, it was a really good. Carl Hart was there as well. I got to meet with him. Got to
Mm.
go out and have pints with him and everything afterwards. It was a great night. It was great crack with
So he
himself.
drink, so he does drink alcohol,
Oh,
not just does heroin.
yeah, he likes a pint, all right. But we had a great
Okay.
night out. Himself, Katie McLeod. But yeah, I was just blown away by what she was describing on the stage that evening, and I just couldn't. She just moved me that time, and when I went back, I was the one who positioned herself to come to the. I think it was in UCC. The conference was that year, and it was me who nominated Katie to come over as a speaker. Because I was just
Oh, nice.
blown away by the work. But it was Boomtown was your first festival, yeah? Or did you go to one before Boomtown as well?
It was the first festival that I had volunteered at welfare.
Volunteered at?
Yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, it was both my first
definitely was.
festival and first festival I volunteered at.
Oh, interesting. A lot of people say that like it's their first festival and their first welfare, but no, I've been doing the festival rounds like for a while, like across Europe and stuff.
Mm.
And still though, like I never really seen anything like that before. And
No.
I never really considered at the same time going to a UK festival. Like it was always just, oh, Ireland and UK are just like too close to home. I have to go further away than that. And but then going there and just seeing the attitudes of like what local police were allowing to occur, you know, in particular there I'm referring to like the loop that was set up in 2017, like that
Mm.
what that didn't require like a national repeal of the Misuse of Drugs Act in the UK. Like that only required just permission by, and that time we were at Creamfields in Liverpool, like they had a proper back of house, like the definition, the industry definition of back house, you know. It's not literally guys like behind the back door where you don't give the results out. Like that's not, you don't hide the back door. Like it's back of house just means that anything that's being picked up,
Hmm.
it's communicated after the fact. And front of house, it's being communicated in real time. So there's no like, you don't need to buy a curtain and hide your surrender bins behind curtains. Like back of house does not mean you need to have it behind the door. 'Cause like that would obviously defeat the purpose. No, back of house drug testing, which was the minimum that they were doing in the UK at the time, was any drugs that were submitted through any of the service providers, which welfare is
Yeah.
one of the major ones, gets tested when there's an abnormal reaction. And we had an abnormal
Big time,
reaction,
yeah.
massive,
Yeah.
massive. Like it occurred to a trend of multiple people. And, you know, if someone dropped a drug on the mat and they wanted to get it tested because they're wondering why they're high for 36 hours and they can't stop moving, like
Yeah.
the police came in and helped us. Like they didn't come in like physically, but they in the back, in behind the scenes, like got it tested offsite, came back 2 hours later with a result and issued warnings across the field. That was
Yeah.
in like 2016. You know, this is like nothing new
Hmm.
at all. It's
Well,
just, and that's the definition of it. It's
I was
back of
there at that
house.
2016 Creamfields, and I think they had it at Boomtown as well. But I know this year it was the first time ever in Ireland they had these like drug surrender bins. But at Boomtown, I think, and the Creamfields, like before you come into the festival, there's like speakers going around informing people, hey guys, look, if you're trying to sneak drugs in, there's bins there. You can dispose of the drugs there before you come through. Just keep in mind, once you get through there, there's no more amnesty, is kind of what they were saying, and you're going to get searched. And if we find something, you're going to get done for it. So they gave people the opportunity to put stuff into the bins even before they came into the festival, and that was also getting tested if I understood the use of those bins correctly. But that was also the first time at Creamfields I seen them using drug dogs to people. Remember that? I think you were beside me. Remember they had this big area and you had to walk across it, and they had like 3 or 4 drug dogs, maybe even more. It was so intimidating, to be fair. I never seen anything like that. It's not a nice way to start your festival journey.
No, in the UK, it's very militarized anyway. Like it's very
Mm,
much like that. I mean, that is like, helicopters, a big police presence, security, surveillance. It's known as a surveillance state. Like they were pretty much one of the first to invent it themselves in the US, spying on their own population and, keeping for maybe their legit reasons like terrorism. But then drugs gets just kind of buried under it, and
mm.
these toys which they own just go to kind of spare during festival season. They're just used on their own citizens. It's kind of sad. And the drug dogs were out at Electric Picnic this year, so I think Ireland has gone down that road as well.
Oh
Like
no.
it's needs to be careful because we don't really have the same challenges that the UK has. In other words, we're not invading any countries where we're going to be expecting retaliation. So why do we need to be bringing training like canines to go through a festival field, unless it's looking for like lost children or predators? But it just seems the Gardaí were more interested in finding drugs than they were trying to find rapists at the weekend. Like they had no interest in taking reports from women, but they had every interest in taking drugs from people. Not on the lower, like not overall at the festival, like not at all, like 90% of the time. But you just the odd time see in the corner of your eye, like a group of them walking around with canines, or like a plain cold clothes guard with a handgun, and you're just kind of like, what's this all about? Like this is not what the festival scene has ever been in Ireland.
Yeah, I was
So
shocked to
it
hear
seems
about the
a
guard with
bit
the
weird.
handgun, but I think we were kind of speculating whether that was in response to the serious assault that happened there on the first night of, oh, well, the
I
second,
don't
I don't know,
know.
the Friday
I,
night
I
of
don't think
festival.
it was
Oh,
because I only noticed this card on the last night, whereas that
okay.
occurred on the first night.
Yeah, that's right.
And what we were told by head of security, which is part of the problem, but it's also very much a good thing as well, is that a lot of the staff are changed this year, like in the festival, but and the secure and the subcontracting companies and stuff. It's a good thing that they're kind of a bit less biased about the whole thing than they were before, when it was very difficult to work, alongside some of these groups. Then again, some of the experienced heads who are very easy to work alongside are gone, and there's these kind of tougher lads who, guys trying to like impress other people and stuff. And when it came to the drugs thing, they just kept trying to like put out, like just kind of like scare us or something. Like he'd come in and be like, oh yeah, that's, we call it out, and he'd come in and say, oh yeah, well, don't you know, like all the head drug gangs are here, and we have, all those dangerous people, like, and I just reply very simply with what I just said, like, oh, I'd really hate Ireland to become like the UK. And in the end he turns to me, yeah, actually I completely agree with that statement. Like I completely agree, like, because they don't think like, oh, that's where it's going to go. Like whatever it is now, they're just thinking about their job, getting through this, the night or the shift without any incidents. Let's face it, no one wants any incidents like of violence, or and that's why Gardaí are there. That's a legitimate reason, and there's other reasons why they're there too, and those are also legitimate reasons. But yeah, like 90% of their interactions are going to be have something to do with drugs, and it's on the discretion of them to like show a blind eye. And we felt that anyone that we worked with were very professional, like very professional. Like there's one guard I was speaking to, and I was kind of talking to him about David Simmons, the writer of The Wire, and he like countered it and said, yeah, like I read all his books. Like, have you read this one? I've read it like so many times. And it's like it's some very educated Gardaí out there, and they
Yeah.
actually are like very much on our side in a lot of aspects, and we have a
Hmm.
lot in common. And it's just that's striking. And then you just see the canines and the dogs and the guard to be like, move, and you're just like, hold on a second, like I'm working here, like that's my van, like I'm literally going to like an emergency, to a call out or whatever.
Hmm.
And like the dog would start barking, and it'd be like, what did I tell you? And it's like, oh right, so the dog just doesn't like long-haired colorful clothed people. Is that what you're trying to tell me, that I had to move out of your way, your path, the vision of the dog, because the dog is somehow very vicious and angry, that it like just goes mental for absolutely no reason?
Jeez.
And like, I was just kind of like, okay, like a lot of these kind of like triggering scenarios during the festival where Man, like you very almost lose your shit, like
Yeah, no,
you don't,
have to have
because you have
yourself.
to be professional and you have to remember, like, it's just this guard, it's just this security guy, it's just this person, like it's not the whole, it's just one person, and that's all it is. That's all it ever is. You
No.
hope.
So, how did you end up in a position that you're leading a team of drug welfare volunteers through Help Not Harm after, I suppose, starting the journey as a volunteer yourself? How did that
Yeah.
process come about?
I suppose like no one was doing Electric Picnic, and they had been offering it to Chill Welfare in the UK, and because they are actually a UK company with a
Okay.
subsidiary called Festival Republic that would be only operating in Republic of Ireland. But they do
Mm.
a lot of shows like Berlin, but Lollapalooza. They do Reading, Leeds, and a few more in the UK. So that contract was offered to them, and then Katie came to me and just said, "Look, it's not really something that we're going to do. We're just going to stick to the UK mainland or whatever." And like she would kind of like, I'll introduce you, but I really still think like you need to think about what it is you need to be able to run this service efficiently. And look what I'm doing over here. But it was impossible for me to ever know like what that number or that cost actually
Hmm.
was, because you know yourself, man, we'd be happy to do stuff for a tenner
Yeah.
if it was like to do drug policy, to do it for free if it was to
Yeah.
do drug
To be
policies.
fair,
Like,
Graham, we've been doing it at our expense for how many years? It wasn't until the likes of you get these Paul Birches and the SSDP stuff,
oh
that
yeah,
it
that's
kind of
10
took.
years into it.
Yeah, but when we were doing LCI, we pretty much paid for all of that stuff. When I made all those DVDs with the Rick Simpson movie on it, I
That
bought
was
those
your cost.
DVDs.
Yeah.
I took that expense on because
Yeah.
I believed in the cause, and I would gladly do it with drug welfare as well, much like yourself. Yeah, but you have to be real. There's big expenses involved in running this kind of a service if you're going to do it right.
Yeah. If you're going to do it right. And it's the same with activism and stuff. Yeah. Like our heart was always there.
Mm.
And then when we started getting organized was when we were we were able to ask for a little bit and then let that run an event or something through the colleges. And then kind of Help No Harm, it was kind of the same once we kind of, and like, because it was very difficult the first year. Like 2016 we did the picnic, and 2017 we did it as well,
Yeah.
but we had no idea like what we were actually getting ourselves into, like to organize it. Like, you know it's a 56,000 person festival. They don't feed us, so we're not treated like staff, so we're
No.
just like below staff, we're not paid. And I'm just kind of like happy to kind of be there and like experience this. It was my first Electric Picnic, and I think probably my first like Irish festival actually.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed it as well, but it had like different challenges. But these are Irish people, so you're kind of doing it just really because you just want to be there and you want to do it, and you're just thinking like, yeah, this was always something like at raves and stuff. You'd always wonder like, is that person okay when security's like carrying, someone out or some body out or something, and it's like, oh, that girl looks like she could be like just like passed out from like too much MD or something, like or too much drink or whatever.
Yeah.
You're always kind of like, we could do a lot better with the nightlife scene and the clubbing and stuff when we were growing up, but some of them would be better than others, obviously, but a lot of them just wouldn't really have an idea of this term welfare, like to give a little bit towards a welfare service at your like rave or festival or your
Hmm.
concert or your gig. And that could be any sort of gig, really. Like that could be anything ranging from like your Thursday, Friday nights, where there was an old ambulance used to park on Air Square in Galway, and they used to just give out like anything that people needed, like blankets and just, like just keeping people safe. And they only lasted like a year because the guards shut them down. Again, they didn't have licenses to be parking up like the way they were doing, and no one filled that void. But there was a demand, there was an interest there, and I think that's still where we need to be going. Actually, is like expanding beyond just a 1 day a year
Hmm.
festival. Like Electric Picnic was the biggest. That's why we're doing it. Obviously, we're trying to like have the most effect in such a short time, but the way I'm kind of thinking about it now is like welfare is a 365-day event. Like it happens every single day, and with your just simple common interactions with another human being, like that's welfare. Like that's
Hmm.
welfare at its core, really. And whether that's like translates to drugs, which it often does, or any other issues as well that you might kind of see or that you might witness, and that you might kind of think twice about that. It's kind of changing my mind a bit, and it has that good effect, I think, on people. Like, it's generally people from a good heart are doing it anyway, like they're not being paid, the conditions aren't that great, it could rain, it could be like just horrible weather, and you're staying in a tent, while like a lot, not all security, but like some of the top people are like housed, and they have their own places off site, or they're camping up production, which is just like a very different experience. So like, I mean, that's kind of why it works very well though. It's like, it's only because of the volunteers. It's only because of the people that do it and that work it.
Mm-hmm.
And this year we went from, say, in 2016, like maybe like a dozen, like maybe like 15 volunteers, 17 volunteers, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And now we had 37. So it's like, it's already like much like bigger, easier to kind of work your shift when someone's taking over the next shift. Much better when that there's like some supplies there, at least, like it's only a phone call away, or it's like every day we might have to top up stuff, but it'll be topped up, and like if we put in requests, they'll be resolved. So it's taken a bit more serious now, definitely, than it was before as well.
Yeah, I definitely got a strong sense of compassion, I suppose, from all of the volunteers that I met through Chill Welfare, and as well above EP that year. I volunteered with you that year.
It's a strong group of people.
There is, and we've got a couple of the volunteers here actually on the Hotbox now. We've Steph is out there who volunteered with you.
Oh, hey, Stefan.
Amy Riley's out there as well. Any other volunteers out there?
What's up,
make
Amy?
yourselves known. But I suppose on that, we kind of talked about it. We brought over the students, and like there's not a whole lot really required from the volunteers outside of what we just talked about. Is just being able to show compassion towards another human being and support them through whatever like crisis it might be, whether it be they've lost their friends and they're drunk, or they're after taking a bit too much MD, and they're just really need to talk to somebody about something in a quiet space and feel comfortable, and maybe giving a cup of tea and showing a bit of empathy. Because I think that was the number one requirement, is to be able to make tea and show empathy. For the
we can definitely do that anyway, am I right?
Yes, we can indeed.
People who consume drugs also happen to be some of the most like empathetic people, like in society, and like whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, like people tend to be a little bit more tapped in with their emotions and the emotions of other people. It's like kind of owning a dog, like they're very like emotional people, and they know instantly the vibes of the room, and when another dog enters the room, or they need to pet or give attention to that dog. It's kind of like the same in welfare. It's like you're just kind of just a bit more attentive, and your training and your experience allows you to kind of just see scenarios and know very quickly what would just like help in those kind of cases. That's all we're doing, really.
Yeah, that was it. I was a bit overwhelmed, I suppose, really overthinking it before I went and volunteered. I was just thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if this happens? And really, when it comes to it, like you can just naturally be able to sit and, I think quite often I just listen to a person in those situations. You don't even have to talk a whole lot. I think that one of the better training kind of things that we did was with the guy Zen Ben, and he was just teaching us how to be present in a conversation, but not interject yourself into the conversation, which was a cool skill in itself, just to allow the person to steer the conversation their own way. And like, if somebody's telling you something about something, not to interject yourself and, oh yeah, well, I was there and I did this as well. And the person might be feeling, no, but you're not listening to me, I'm telling you about me, and that's kind of thing. So that was one cool little skill set I got off that, and I think it's something I brought back into my everyday life then as well afterwards, just being a skill of being able to listen.
Yeah, active listening. Yeah, it's a good one, because you often think like you have to solve someone's problems like there and then, but sometimes people be living with their problems all their life, and it's slow. It's through a process, really, not instantly, but it can come up, especially when people are after taking drugs or they're with friends and stuff. And yeah, often it's just being someone there just to listen, and like the person can either kind of just get a benefit from that, or maybe find some solutions themselves with their own personal problems as they're kind of talking about it, and it kind of almost happen mid-sentence. You see people like resolving, kind of coming out of it almost, like they know that everything's grand. And one thing I would say and remind people is like this is a safe space, and that seemed to kind of really calm people down as well. Like it was affirmative. Like it was like, yes, this is a safe place, and often they would repeat that as if they're just noting it to themselves as well, but they're just saying it out loud. And it is, like we're impartial, we're like non-judgmental. Like there's nobody going to be arrested in our welfare tent.
Oh,
There's nobody going to have any issues. We work very closely with medics, so if there is any like medical needs, other than just someone being on a bad trip or whatever it is, or just wants to get just checked out for a second, or hydrated, or have a cup of tea, and just kind of have a breather or a bed, or they need their tent is collapsed, they need another tent, or they need like some spare clothes if they've been soaked, which there are a lot of people. So like, we went down on the Sunday morning and we bought like every towel, every blanket, and all the spare clothes in Stradbally. Farmers market, or like the clothes market, the secondhand shop, and St. Vincent's de Paul. We just went in there and like everything we just bought, and we just said like we give it out, and anyone that needs it can have it. And sure enough, like everything was needed. Like pretty much, like you're just like hanging on to your last resources, trying to make it stretch. Like, and you just repeat it the next day, because it was such a disaster at the weekend. Like every day was like that.
yeah. So at the festival, I suppose for people who maybe didn't know about it, it was Friday. It wasn't too bad when it started off, I think, wasn't it? And
It started on Thursday.
well, yes. Sorry, yeah, it wasn't too bad Thursday when it
and it was
started
grand
off.
on Thursday. Yeah,
And then Friday got shitty.
and then it got really bad.
Yeah, really lashed for Friday and Saturday, like pretty much just lashed. And then Sunday it maybe cleared up a little bit again, but for everybody to go home.
Yeah, and you would see people already leaving like early morning. Like they wouldn't camp on like say Saturday night or Sunday night. Like you just see them leave, especially Sunday night. Like the traffic, as people left just after like the headliner act of Monkeys. Like it was really just like very, very busy, and especially busy for us down at our tent, because that's like it's like the entry or exit, the main entry and exit from the main arena to the campsite. Jimi Hendrix campsite is where we're located. And the traffic there, like just foot traffic, the footfall every minute of every day is just like huge, like compared to any other part of the festival.
Insane.
So that's why we're strategically there. But yeah, like we have a 6x9 tent, which like we need to really like to be like 3 or 4 times bigger next year, fingers crossed. And we only have like 6 beds, which we really need like 3 times that.
Yeah.
And we just have to manage with what we got, and that can be that's like probably more stressful than actually the job that we're doing. And that was frustrating at the weekend. That was definitely very frustrating at the weekend. But like thankfully then like the medics would like help us out, like massively, and the guards are actually very helpful as well for the most part. So like if it wasn't for that and that kind of camaraderie, like we were all down the trenches together. There was no us and you. It was all just, we just have to get through. We have to survive this. Like we can't have someone dying at this festival. And that's what it became, and it became life or death.
Yeah, happy days.
Don't exaggerate that. Like,
well, it's good to see that you kind of stood side by side, but it's a pity that the festival organisers aren't there with you and giving you adequate resources. 6 beds for the drug welfare tent. It's not
that's
sufficient.
A joke. Like I think what actually like. So the festival itself has a very good staff handbook, and this is how it kind of sets out the whole tone of like drugs and drug policy. And they have a safeguarding plan as well, which is kind of cool, because we asked for coordination, and they went and they hired 2 people to coordinate better our services, and that worked for the first time this year. That worked really, really well. But they have this this handbook, and they mentioned drugs, and I highlighted a few times here in front of me, but this must be mentioned about like 20 or 30 times, and they actually say it's only drug dealing that they try and stop, and then in all cases of drug use, they say that they try to help. And so it's like from the actual like, at least from the people there that work, I think they really do care and they do understand. And it's, they've been there probably at many events before, especially working in the UK, which most of them are from. They want to do stuff to help, but then there's a lot in the way as well. And it's just a lot different working in Ireland than it is working in the UK. And I think they struggle a bit, sometimes like last year was cancelled, sure, like when there was no concerts cancelled in the
Mm-hmm.
UK or anywhere in the world by then, like really, they cancelled Electric Picnic. Imagine what the loss that is like to that. I mean, I think they probably like did okay, but they probably profited a little bit of anything like event is cancelled. Like, I don't know, do they get the sponsorship money back? I don't know how those kind of terms work as well. People got paid, obviously, like, but
Mm-hmm.
the regulators, yeah, like, it's like the laws come first, like, and like when I try to give feedback about the welfare situation and amnesty bins, they listen, and they listen to all the suggestions that I make, and
That's
I'm
good.
very thankful for that. And they have hired two positions for coordinations. I really really appreciated that this year. They did their best version of surrender bins, and I really appreciate their effort for trying to accommodate that and deal with that, because that was a very difficult one to deal with. And I don't just mean the Gardaí there, like I think the HSE are a very hard organization to deal with too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot, so there's a lot of mistakes made in that organization, as we're all very, very well aware of, with many cases coming through their door, and a lot of inept people working, and bureaucratic people. There's just more bureaucrats than there are medical doctors in Ireland, and we're just exporting all the talent, and we're just keeping all, like, just people who are taking up space. And
Yeah.
a lot of the top guards as well, like Brian Farrell,
Right.
head of the drugs unit. Like, he comes down, sees, and like he sees that there's a drug surrender bin in the tent next to us, and in the medics tent. We don't want anything to do with the drug. We don't need the drugs. Man, we're doing welfare. We're doing what our job is. We're not drug data scientists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes and he rips it out of the floor, like, and he's just like, there is be no surrender bin anywhere near welfare, or I'll arrest all of you. And it's like no other service gets that kind of treatment, and we're all just kind of like just kind of laughing at the poor guy. Like, it's kind of like, well, like, but then it's like, it's kind of scary too. It's like, what actually drives an opinion like that, when all the
Yeah.
foot soldiers down here at Trenchtown are actually on our side secretly, and not even secretly, and we know it too. Like, I'm smiling with confidence. I know it. Like, 90% of the guards actually support drug legalization. Like, I know for a fact after working at a festival, it's actually just like not even 10%. It's like a couple of people at the top. And if you kind of piece together after watching The Wire, you can just kind of like maybe think about it. But not only that, like, there's genuine cases where this kind of regime fits into people's narratives, their profit, their quotas, and their profits. What they make. And I think those 350 arrests that happen every year aren't by guards who actually think drugs are bad. They're by guards who take the opportunity to get promoted, so then they don't have to work a bloody stupid rainy festival again. They get to like work from wherever they want to work, and they get to get a better car and a better badge and all this kind of crack. Like, people are just taking advantage of the drug war and the situation that's there, and buying new weapons and getting new dogs and training new like defense forces and stuff. And
launching
I don't
Operation
believe in that.
Taras.
Yeah, exactly. And like drug dealing, we know would just be taken out of it straight away if they just control and regulate safe
Yeah.
supply. Like, everybody could come into my tent and tell me where the drug dealing was happening, like, and they would tell me openly. This year, compared to other years, there are people that are very good with being open and honest, and it helps us to kind of react and understand and talk to people.
Yeah.
But there was one case where a guy and his girlfriend came in, and she had taken half a pill and he had taken a pill, and it was kind of a gray. He described the pill as like a gray like substance, which could have met the kind of description of the pill at Reading Leeds Festival last week, the weekend prior, where the 16-year-old guy tragically passed away, and potentially potentially had like a kind of reaction maybe sometime in his tent or with his friends, and they were too scared to bring him to the medic's tent, and he may have like had a seizure before he even got there, because he wasn't actually conscious by the time they brought him to medics. Now, sometimes people wouldn't be conscious when they'd be brought to welfare too. Like, it's not like, sometimes it happens, but you really want the message to be like, don't be afraid to come forward.
Yeah.
And then how can you have that message when there's canines barking at you?
No, it's
You're
mixed.
16 years old.
Yeah, you're selling them one thing, but you're doing another thing, treating them another way. So you're telling them to come to you, but meanwhile you're standing there with fucking dogs barking. It's like, it's just the wrong way to do it. It needs to have compassion. Like, I think the only way really to eliminate the majority of the risks associated with drug use is through regulation, through education.
Oh yeah.
Because that people are going to do drugs anyway. But me and you know that 90% of the guards, as you say, kind of agree with that as well.
I
Even
think so.
I got to meet with a guard there last week, giving a statement and stuff like that, and had a nice chat with him. And the guy was another human being sitting across the table to me, and he agreed with me on these fucking human issues.
Yeah, man,
So,
people are listening.
yeah,
They really have their ears open now.
yeah, but he said it himself. He goes, I can't say none about this, yeah, and they can't, because you think about a normal Joe out there working for the likes of Pfizer's can't speak up because, he might lose his job or, get exposed in some way. Like, it's that times 100 for the guards, the stigma, the pressure there for them not to speak out, because if they do speak out, they're going to be like so isolated within that group because nobody else is really going to speak out with them, unfortunately, because that stigma is just so strong within that organization.
Yeah, it is, man. And
From the
like you
top
really
down.
see the consequences of the drug war when you go outside of Ireland as well and you come back. And I just have a unique perspective there that I'd like to share, like having been in Mexico City for like the last 3 weeks leading up to Lecture Picnic and being there again in Jalisco, where the narco state kind of was at its kind of peak, I suppose, because it's the cannabis region where they grow tequila, agave, and cannabis. And I was there in February. Had a great time down by the ocean, whale watching and looking at dolphins and stuff. But there, there's this monument in Mexico City of the 43 students who are buried alive and tortured by. It wasn't actually the drug cartel, as it turned out. It actually turned out that it was the chief of police and the military, because they were the ones who were the drug cartel. Yeah. It was the same person. The same entity was actually running the drug, and the drug kingpin. They didn't actually send those text messages. It came first from the chief of police to say these 43 students got on the wrong bus. They're heading to Mexico City it was for the anniversary of another protest of the student movement of the 60s. So a lot of I suppose, maybe progressive universities and colleges and groups meeting in Mexico City. And these guys from the outskirts down south at the border just happened to get on a public bus, but that public bus was full of heroin and it was destined to the US. And I think it was a public bus, but whatever bus that they had hired or gotten anyway, got hold of. And somewhere along that journey, the police interjected. And I think one separated one group in the cave and tortured them, and then another group kind of somewhere else and tortured them, in very, very kind of bad ways. The children had never been found as young as 18, and to this day the parents are still advocating for an investigation, but the military down south, because they control the cartel, won't open that inquiry. And even just being there during that week, I was kind of taking pictures and I was like, it was actually just really sad. And I didn't even bother posting it online or anything like that, because it was just kind of a very personal thing. Because I remember we did a vigil in Galway and 3 people turned up in 2014 when I started the Irish Centre of Human Rights. And SSDP was obviously a young organization, and that's a very personal thing that basically SSDP guys are drug advocates or any sort of advocates in Mexico are just being tortured at this age, as we were all that age at when we kind of, at least you and I were, when we set out kind of doing this, we were in our teenage years. And it's just kind of very sad to think that a teenager who expresses their opinion will actually be tortured, and it will be by the police in the military. But sure enough, someone wrote it on their Facebook, and they said a journalist from that region, and they criticized why the inquiry hasn't happened, because the transcripts came out during lockdown, and then he was shot in the head in his car.
Not surprising from Mexico.
The day I was leaving, I was like, all right, so this is just and if you speak out about it as a journalist, you also get killed too, or tortured too, or your families also disappear. And you're just this is all due to drug policy. This is entire thought and tragedy, and it's just countless, and 150,000 people missing or dead due to the drug war in Mexico in the last 10 years. Come on, man. And then in the US, it's just the same picture. It's just over policing and over imprisoning people. And then it's Ireland coming out now with their helicopters, their drug dogs, and their handguns and stuff. And guns, whatever. I suppose you have to defend yourself too sometimes as a guard, and it mustn't be easy to work as a guard. And there's probably genuine reasons, maybe there was a reason for someone to be on site at the picnic, but it's just not normal, really. I suppose
definitely not.
and in Mexico, it is normal because they go around with massive turrets in these armored vehicles, and they have balaclavas on, and there's like 10 of them, and they're being driven around at any given day. And that's like there to protect you. Like, you should be happy that they're there. Like, that's not like anything to be ever criticizing. And it's like, damn, imagine if that was Ireland.
I'd say a lot of people out there right now have seen the Narcos episodes, the Mexico ones, and if you haven't seen them, definitely I would suggest watching them, because I think to give a very good depiction there of do you know how, like, there was no real good guys in the drug war. They were all bad guys in their own way, and the which they were doing it. The people who were enforcing the prohibition, the people who were trying to defy the prohibition, in terms of the big organized drug cartels and stuff like that. Some of the FBI agents and things like that were seen to be doing like some of the nasty stuff. And no, I know that's a dramatization of what went on, but
it's of true events.
It's of true events. Exactly.
It's not just like made up. Like.
No, it's not completely made up, but I know a lot of it does get dramatized, but it is of true events still, so it does still carry some weight. And for me, every episode, I was just like, look there, that's another reason why prohibition shouldn't fucking exist. I couldn't sit still, genre. I was just like, every example was just like, it's all there right now. Empire Boardwalk was another good TV show, and it's just like, it's about alcohol prohibition. And again, in that, you see countless examples as to why drug prohibition doesn't work. You've got this mutually beneficial exchange of goods between people. I've got money, you've got something nice that I want, i.e. maybe some cannabis flower or alcohol prohibition times. So like there's no fucking authority out there who's really going to be able to prevent that. At least not until we've got like fucking centralized digital currency owned and controlled by the governments. But hopefully we can stay away from that for a while longer.
Yeah, like it all comes down to this like authority kind of like dilemma or whatever, that or complex that some people have, you know, like it's not just Gardaí, you know, who wear uniforms. Like security, man, had a lot to speak for, you know, at the festival at the weekend, and they, you know, they wear high vis. And I know, again, you know, you'd say, oh, security, aren't they there to be on the front line in case something goes wrong? It's like, well, that's kind of the Gardaí actually, and I trust them a lot more because they're a lot more better educated than like your average security guy. And it's kind of like, so there was a motorcycle like club member from and it was very strange, like that these kind of, you know, some people like this would be given like a high vis and given an authority, like, and like you have to just look at like through history when the last time like the Hells Angels did the security for, you know, music festival in the United States, and you know, someone ended up dying and being stabbed to death by the Hells Angels. Like, you start to think like and conclude reasons why you don't put, you know, known gangs in security positions. Like, we have to guard or vet people who work with, you know, missing children and stuff, but there's no vetting of any sort for anybody that comes through that festival. Whereas if you look at the UK, for example, if someone who's on the sex offenders list tries to enter a music festival in the UK, something will buzz basically, an alert will go out, and the police will escort that person back on the train, and they go away from that venue. We don't have anything like that in Ireland. So if you're talking about surveillance, maybe drugs isn't the most dangerous menace to society, but there's actually much more obvious ones in front of our eyes. Yep. And I wonder how many times those people have actually been given uniforms even, and actually high-vis jackets. Like, who's to say someone just doesn't buy a high-vis jacket for €5 in a second-hand shop down the road or in the Super Value, walks into the festival, no one is asking anybody about a high-vis jacket, any questions, and that's your content. It could be compromised immediately. Like, the access control is horrendous. It's so easy to hack it. It's so easy to double spend it. It's so easy to sneak in there. It's so easy to just like, I don't know, man, to get like, and it's a bad environment, and it's a bad recipe for disaster, to be honest. Like, and if it was up to me, like a lot of things would have to change radically about the Irish festival scene, in particular, big ones, for them to be allowed to occur, because statistically we're going to get cases of sexual assault, cases of overdose, cases of just general assault, never mind all the other like general welfare issues like weather related, disaster relief, drug related, you know, crisis intervention, all the rest of it. Um, and it's incredibly sad, like, to meet, people who may be victims of some of these things. And like, there was a girl who overdosed as well at the weekend, but thankfully she had made it through ICU and was taken off the ventilator, I believe, is the last update that I got. But I don't know much more, like, other than that, to be honest with you. So yeah, like, it's very tough, and thankfully, for our volunteers, they toughed through it, and even for that, like, I'm very, very
Yeah.
grateful for each and
Well,
every one
I
of
know
them.
speaking to you beforehand that you are a bit concerned coming into this, that this is going to be the first big massive event like this in a number of years. Because of the cancellation of events over the COVID stuff. So, like, yeah, thank God we have gotten through that, and none of your fears were realised. That it didn't actually come true, because you were thinking that there was going to be a lot more drug overdoses, I think, before this actually festival went ahead. Like,
Yeah, I was definitely concerned,
yeah,
just to say the least, like,
so
based on other kind of, like, seeing the drug trends last festivals in the UK last summer. It kind of changed a lot, like a lot of new psychoactive
yeah,
substances, and kind of different things that people thought they were buying, but it wasn't quite
yeah.
that. And that was going to have, I knew that was going to have a weird effect. But if that was to happen, and I did actually think that there would be some overdoses, and there was one. So my suspicions were probably right. Like, maybe I did kind of think even worse than that. Like, I did maybe think that
Yeah.
someone might die, but then, as it turns out, like, there's someone with life-threatening injuries over an assault. So it didn't come in the drug-related thing that I kind of expected it would. But equally, coming out of lockdown, people have become very violent and drinking a lot more alcohol, and that kind of mix as well isn't, and doing a lot more cocaine and all of these other drugs. But together, I suppose, sometimes, coupled with coming out of lockdown, um, it's kind of caused a much rougher kind of scene as well in nightlife. Like, I don't really go out much at all in Ireland, to be quite honest, like, these days. But that's at least what I hear from people who work in different kind of areas. That kind of includes kind of nightlife and people who go out and
Yeah.
stuff. So that was really sad, to kind of hear that someone was assaulted that badly by people, and that they got away. I think they got away with it. Like, I don't know that there's been any arrests made, and it's bizarre, like that.
You think
Like,
on a music festival there's just witnesses everywhere, but maybe, John, there's just a lot going on and people don't even realise, that person just got seriously assaulted.
but there's cameras too. There's
Yeah,
cameras everywhere too, and
that's true.
that's why it's unusual. Like, unless you had some pre knowledge of where
Hmm.
cameras were.
Yeah.
How could you know? How could you assault someone, almost kill someone? How could you rape someone? How could you do all these things to be? How could you drug deal? How could you know any of this stuff? How would you know where the cameras are? Like, I don't know where the cameras are. I have no idea that there even was cameras until one night, going in, being brought into for a meeting in event control, and seeing massive, and it's reassuring that there's cameras, to be honest. Like, it's
Hmm.
like a UK setup. It's like, yeah, there's surveillance, but it's just, I can't understand then how things slip the radar. Um,
Yeah, there's certainly room for improvement there in that regard, anyway. But I suppose, just for the people out there listening, the people who didn't get the opportunity, well, everybody got the opportunity actually to volunteer because we announced it there. But people who might be thinking of doing it in the past, who might have been maybe a bit too worried about it, and thinking that they mightn't have been cut out for it. But what kind of work did you encounter this time? What kind of challenges were there, in terms of service users? What kind of difficulties were they having, and how was it that your volunteers were helping them?
yeah, like, the weather was the most one. So
Oh,
it's kind of like
really? Yeah.
disaster relief was a massive one. We had a full-time firefighter on the team, and he really knew how to kind of respond, and knew how to kind of make demands of what we needed. Getting a second heater and coming up with me at production, and like demanding it, and then saying no, not one, two. Like, asking for more than what you need. And just so we were able to bring heaters down, we were able to, like, warm people up, keep them dry, and just kind of just generally dry out, like, the wet that was just constantly pouring, like. So that was a big one. Wouldn't say that, like, that's like the hardest thing to do, but I think when it's coordinated well, it does better than when it's not coordinated. Like, when you're not really given heaters, or when your tent is too small, or then it's kind of then it becomes frustrating. But the actual providing for people in those scenarios, it's, yeah, I think that's like kind of a one that we can kind of deal with. And then there's other issues then could range from people taking, so there was a lot of high strength MDMA and pills that were tested by the HSE surrender bins, which were, very, very, very good to, it was very good to get that information. So when people came in and they said, they might have taken X number of pills mixed with, whatever other drugs, we'd kind of know which, right, this is the MD kicking in now, and they're just really, really high, and they just need some support there, like maybe they're trying to coordinate with a friend, and they need to know, like, where are they, because they're not really, they're not really fully there, and or maybe maybe there's cases where people are extremely intoxicated, and like they come in and they need a bed to lie down on, they need somewhere to sleep, and exhaustion is setting in for a lot of people, because some people will go there and they don't even have a tent, so they just think, sure, they'll just keep doing yokes and they'll just keep staying awake, and they just keep doing drugs, and like, it doesn't work like that.
No,
like,
no bueno.
it's not
Go on,
work.
crash and
Come on,
burn.
like, look after your body, like, just go to sleep for, like, nothing's happening anyway between like 6, like 5 and like 2 or something, like, just sleep during those hours and you'll be fine. Again, if there are these oxygen bars, which is like a controversial one, I suppose, but
where you just suck on oxygen, the masks.
I probably could have done with it myself, just working there. Like, but like, it'd be tempting to use one if you were hungover. I'd say you probably would if it was like something available and it was cheap enough to do. And now you're just like, you're in good shape to go. Like,
I'd say there was nothing cheap at EP, but
no, there's nothing cheap at EP. No, that was probably the biggest like scam. Really was where the vendors and the payment processing was all done through UK payment processors. People were charging pounds. And like, you didn't really know, like, was did the vendor have to up their prices? Was everything so expensive because of like the conversion rates and stuff? Like, it was just a very weird, like, no cash was accepted for the first couple of days. But then everybody had a sign, cash accepted here, like, on the last day. Like,
did it change?
It had to, man. Like, it didn't make any sense that they were like putting all this through someone's account and then going to wait until after the festival to get that money.
Yeah, that's mad.
That's mad.
But yeah, that's the cashless society. They're trying to push on people, but I'm glad to hear that they all kind of changed their minds on the last day, at least, anyway.
Yeah, they resisted, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Businesses and people we do what we can, and we're very practical, like, and on a greenfield site like that with that rain, that's how I would describe it. Like, just people just toughing through as best as they could, like, whether it's like getting fleeced from the money or getting from the card machines, or whether, whatever it was, like the weather and stuff. Like, yeah, it was still very high spirits. Like, people on the whole, like, not everyone is there with the best intention, but on the whole, I think there was just a very good vibe. It's an Irish music festival. I really enjoyed it, even though I didn't see any acts pretty much. Like, I didn't like go out, but just interacting with people, I was very happy, like, just hearing some, like, I think we're headed in a good direction. People are kind of, they're kind of like, they've really wised up to a lot of stuff, and I'm just generally happy. Even though a lot of media is like kind of doom and gloom, I'd actually be very kind of positive about Irish people, and I wouldn't underestimate the kind of power there that the group kind of psychology has. Like, we've seen with like viral campaigns like Vera. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if something just like radically changed, like, and it was because Irish people wanted it, and authorities may not, but it would just change anyway. Maybe the surrender bins is like an example of that. I'm not even like referring to that, but something much more radical than that, because that was kind of, there was 3 alerts in the throughout the whole festival. Like, that's not bad, like, but really, like, back at houses, like, there's probably a good few tests now, to be fair, being done and data being shared, while it's not real time. And then certainly front of house would be like probably like several thousand samples that would be like communicated in real time.
Yeah.
And then safe supply, like, that would all be printed on a label when you're purchasing that substance, and you just be guaranteed that that's what that substance is, So a lot of other ways that we could probably approach this whole, do drugs in a field and camp for 4 days, probably a bit rudimentary, if you ask me now at this point.
Yeah, there's definitely better ways to be doing it, but I suppose we will get there eventually. I do see better days ahead. Like to see the introduction of these surrender bins at the moment, it's like the policymakers have been dragged kicking and screaming on this one. But like you are saying, that the people are getting what they want. It might be a little bit at a time, but we are eventually going to get it. And it's undeniable that the public wants change in this regard. You put out surveys in this, and people looking at even decriminalisation. The drug user, massive support there for that. And when you talk about harm reduction, if you talk about harm reduction, are people in support of harm reduction? There's a massive support for it. But I think then people do get a bit scared when you talk about a safe drug supply. But those same people are all for harm reduction. So, it's just getting
those same probably people are probably taking drugs themselves. So like, let's be honest, like where would you prefer your drugs to be coming from? Would you prefer it to be bootlegged moonshine, or would you prefer it to be like, I don't know, Guinness 0.0 if you don't drink, or Guinness Light, or bloody, Heineken Light or whatever, or like the stronger stuff if you want the collection of whiskies, like they're in a restaurant earlier, there's big collection of whiskies. Like, it's not for me at this particular time, probably. Like, I didn't feel like it, but like, so kind of impressed like that people would take that much interest in something and have it on display like that. Like that's like, and people taking pictures of it and stuff. Like, that's our relationship with drugs, and that's just one drug. Like, there's many other drugs, and people then taking those and then interacting with each other. Like, there's a lot of Calvin Klein. Have you heard of Calvin Klein before?
No. What's the story with Calvin Klein?
I think it was taking MDMA and ketamine together.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a big one. That was a big trend.
I've heard of hippie flipping, Jedi tripping.
Yeah.
That was the other one. There was a couple of other ones I heard of, but yeah, that was.
Write them in the chat. Write your favorite combo. But these are things that we're learning as well. Like, I suppose, yeah, like in the end, it wasn't that bad of a combination, I suppose. Like, it sounds a lot worse, probably. And then it was very handy. We had this Tripsit banner placed outside, 2 of them actually, and they're like blown up, and it would show the drug interactions, and people were taking photos of it and were really like enthralled by this. So that was like brought up by Michael and Kat. So they were like really nice to do that. And it just worked very well. So like, there's stuff like that, like delivering drug information and drug awareness. And sometimes it's just the basics, and you'd forget sometimes like that's like a lot of it as well, is just like basics. Like, we had Know Your Rights cards that Natalie O'Regan, who's doing her final FE1 exams, like in like a couple of months. She posted all these like little like kind of wallet cards. They like fold up and put into your wallet, and we just like gave them out. We did like some surveys. So if you're interested in like data gathering, science, that sort of stuff as well, I think that would be like a skill that we probably need more of, because if we can do it's a good icebreaker anyway, but if we can do more like research and just kind of know and track these kind of trends. So we started in 2016, 2017, now 2022, skipped a few years there, and then just like hopefully do it next year again, and just be aware and communicate this then with other services, so that they know, oh, this is what Calvin Klein means, this is the drug combination. And actually, if you look at the Tripsit poster over there, which I often did with members of HSE and other kind of groups, and they'd look at it and they'd say, oh, I thought that this one would be like a very dangerous combination. And it ended up like that, not so. It kind of gives a different kind of grading anyway. But check out the poster if you don't know the one I'm referring to. But it was very helpful. So we know a lot of drug awareness and people interested to get that information as well.
Sweet, yeah. So I heard right there. So next year, you have all intentions of being back, and you will be looking for more volunteers. So next year.
Yeah, I definitely would like to continue doing what we've been asked to do, and there's a lot of that we can do between now and then as well. So instead of like just thinking about, like the training that we can do between now and then, and we can focus on, I think like if we can provide a few different modules, training modules, whether that's in like first aid accreditation, whether that's in like recovery position, CPR, whether that's in like any other kind of areas, really, like even the lock zone would be something that I'd like to look into. We had a Sharpie bin there for any discarded needles and stuff. Like we we didn't really come across any, but like we had heard that there was like a tent that was selling heroin somewhere like near, I don't know, probably near the campsite or something in one direction or another. So like all this kind of feedback comes back, and we think like, so we better be prepared. We better have a kind of act as a kind of needle exchange down there. Like that would be something I'd like to kind of look at as well. The naloxone thing, like I said. I mean, there's a whole load of kind of training that could be done, like working with young people, children. Garda vetting is kind of one thing that was expressed for people who would be able then to work with minors in like maybe a third location or tent. So the way we have welfare at Jimi Hendrix next to medics, we have welfare up at evictions, and then we could have another welfare maybe somewhere at like production or something. So any missing children that need welfare, they can be cared for with just like very child-friendly activities and tools and like toys like DVD, TVs, not coloring books, not just like being placed like in the middle of like, a welfare tent that's down next to medics that's looking after people after taking Calvin Klein, and like, come on, like, there's so many things that like I think anybody working with like, immediately comes to mind, like that we can just do better. And that's one thing that I'd like to offer back to anybody that does agree to be part of this, so that can do the 4 days next year. Like, you're welcome to come to these training modules that'll occur throughout the year and throughout the semester 1 and semester 2. We're going to try and tie up with the colleges as well and stuff. So yeah, definitely you can check it out on like helpnoharm.org. If you go there, maybe the recent blog might have a link to it or something, but there should be like a sign up form there anyway somewhere.
Excellent. Yes, somebody just said there, Georgie Maher said it was brilliant listening tonight. It was just gone tuning out there, but saying it's an absolutely brilliant idea for these welfare tents to be at festivals, saying it's something that's been needed for years. So nice one for that there, Georgie. But yeah, for anybody else out there, guys, definitely do consider volunteering next year. It's an amazing service. It's really rewarding work. I know myself, I would actually describe it as it's kind of selfish work that you do, because I think you get a lot out of it yourself too.
You get a lot of thanks, all right? You do, like.
Yeah, no, it is very rewarding work. You're doing it for people, and you do feel better about it afterwards. Because a couple of days after the festival, you're thinking back and you're just thinking of this conversation you had with that person, and you're just like you said a while ago. You're thinking at the back of your mind that person left that tent, and their festival experience was much better thereafter because of that conversation, because of that interaction. And it could have been, a night-long conversation, or it could have been a 5-minute cup of tea and showing a bit of empathy. And I think that there's something very rewarding for that, for yourself as well. So yeah, definitely do, guys. Give it a think anyway, and don't be shy. There's something there for everybody, as well as Graham was saying. There's opportunities just to go out there, interact with people, do some data gathering through surveys, and maybe get out there as well if we have enough volunteers, maybe, and the equipment. I think one of the very fun things, you probably agree with me with this, is going out interacting with punters with the big fucking water cannon on your back, keeping people hydrated. It's a mobile hydration station.
Yeah, I remember we had the tea jetpack at one of the support done punishes. That I was thinking that would have come in handy at the weekend if we get like tea jetpack and give her loads of cups of tea. And head out into the camps.
I would say we stick to the water, I'd say, but because tea could get a bit messy. Hot water on the dance floor, I don't know.
And when you're that cold and you're that wet, like that's like you should see the color of the kettle. Like, it's just like completely destroyed, like brand new kettle, just like all the bloody calc and all the like sauce and minerals and just built up. I mean, the water is probably a bit hard as well, but it's just normal water. Like, there's so many teas just being made. Like, like the lemon ginger tea. We had no CBD tea actually. I was kind of a bit upset about that. Maybe we should have reached out to someone for sponsoring or something like that. But we had like Irish tea, I suppose a little bit of that. Decaf coffees, like.
While we're on this, you also had a chef there for the weekend, did you not? And I heard he kept you well fed.
Alan Beavan from Kenmare,
nice.
Who is from the McCarthy's pub, and they like yeah, kindly like came up, two of them in the van, like refrigeration.
Excellent.
We were able to store food that was like pre-prepared. So we had like lasagna one night, veggie or beef. So it was catering for the two. We had, oh man, just like so much good food. Stew another night. It was like very, very hearty, very nice porridge every morning. So yeah, like it was very well done. So everybody was fed very well. We even like ended up having so much food that we like fed, like there was a load of like security that came in the last day, because like there was a couple of walkouts like the night before, and the night before that even, and they ended up giving like high vis jackets to a bunch of asylum seekers living in direct provision. So all of a sudden on Sunday, like the campsites just like became full of people I met from like Botswana, South Africa, like all over Africa, like people from Palestine. You know, they're like they're fleeing the war there. Like you know, you're like you're hearing all these like cases and stories as well, which is like people who just moved the last like year or so, or 6 months even. They're all given security jobs, but they're not given the right to work. But they're given like €36 a week to live on, which they're saying is better than what it was, €9. But and they're happy to do it. But I'm kind of like, Jesus, like what? Like there's no Irish people willing to work, but like they have no problem giving these jobs that Irish companies have walked out on
Hmm.
to people who can't actually legally get paid. There's something very like strange about that.
Yeah.
I
Because
don't really
those
understand.
people
Like,
won't kind of stand up for their rights. They won't challenge them. They're happy to get paid and taken advantage of because, at least they're not being tortured and, like persecuted and stuff like that. So, all right, they're giving me shitty pay. I don't care. Back in my country, what they're fleeing from is a lot worse. So,
but we got one volunteer for next year, so I'm not going to say no. You know, like
uh,
we fed like all these security, all these people, anyone that we liked. Like we didn't really feed the Irish people because a lot of them were just kind of like this weird like Irish on Irish mentality of just like being at each other's throat. It just seemed like a lot of the foreigners, while they weren't in the top positions of security, like they were like really really kind to her, much more kind, and like we had no problem like giving them cups of teas and coffees, helping them out and stuff. Like even the lads from Northern Ireland, like really, really sound like, but like a lot of the security then were just like very, very poor. Like that's just kind of the nature of it, really. Like what two of them walked out like 2 different days. But they had a lot of companies there at the same time, like 20 security companies or something like that. So like maybe one or two are bound to kind of they got paid in advance, so they didn't really care. 30
hmm
euro an hour or something.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Good for them, I suppose.
Like that's the thing. Like I mean, it is what it is, I suppose. You know, like one idea that I heard, which I think is interesting. I heard it actually from a woman called Lisa Law. She's the photographer of Woodstock, and
Hmm.
she was the original person who like fed everyone at that festival. So for me, she was like kind of the welfare queen. She was on a call with her earlier. She's in Santa Fe at the moment, traveling to Santa Fe, and she was saying that like an idea that they actually published after Woodstock 69 was this kind of like manual or like pamphlet like that would actually like make recommendations for welfare, which wasn't called welfare, I don't know what they called it, to different festivals. And if you like followed these principles, like the integrity of your festival, like all these different things will stay intact, And one of the things was one of the suggestions is you actually don't give security responsibility and high vis jackets to the likes of, say, biker gangs and stuff like that. Tough guys, like you actually give it that job to welfare. So the welfare would actually be the first people who that you actually meet at a festival. They're the ones checking your wristbands and they're the ones directing you. So instead of being like completely clueless and only like trying to cause trouble and kick you out with that kind of mentality that everybody's like bad and like confrontational, you come at it from the total opposite perspective. And that would just like kind of maintain like a level of just like a well organized festival, and there was all these like different like principles that like she recommended. I kind of was thinking of it today, like it wouldn't be too bad if that was like given to, well, it would be like a massive job though if it was like it'd be like a very very big job, and I don't know would
Or
we do it with 37 volunteers.
well, if we're getting paid €30 an hour, happy days. If we're getting the security pay.
And that's the thing. It was the festival organizer, Michael. What's his name? Michael. I have it written down somewhere, but he's on that Woodstock '99
Mm-hmm.
documentary. I can't remember his surname now, but he actually is quoted as saying he regretted not following that manual with the next festival that he organized, which was a total disaster. And he said for it was the best $130,000 he's never paid. So in other words, it was only going to cost 130 grand. Over the general scheme of things, it's nothing. And what it actually does is, like, if you give security to welfare, you save so much. And then what happened in his festivals were like police brutality, police batting people, security
Oh
like
shit.
killing people, knifing people, like total mayhem. Really, like in like the '60s died. Like that was the way they'd believe it. Like the '60s died when the Hell's Angels were given the security jobs. Like, and you just wonder, like, what has actually changed in this time? Like that's so long ago, like, and we're
Mm-hmm.
still kind of doing festivals like the same way, like making the same mistakes and stuff, when we could just like look at these principles by these people who have worked these shifts before, like feeding people, looking after people, caring for people, just follow their advice and your festival experience would be just like a lot better.
Yeah.
Or don't follow the advice and like fine, but like there's just going to be better festivals than that festival, like
Yeah. No,
people
100%.
can go to.
Um, when you started this off, I suppose back in 2016, Help My Harm would have been the first drug welfare service provider for music festivals in Ireland. If
I guess I
oh,
believe there
wasn't it?
was like maybe another small one. Like I don't
Okay.
know what year that came, but I think I started hearing about that one like maybe 2017. But to be fair, but I don't know what they were doing, like some small festivals anyway. And now
Okay.
there's like I mean loads like
Yeah, the only other group I'm aware of is Psycare Ireland, who that
yes,
they're
like Ireland,
actively
yeah.
seeking charity status. I think now in Ireland, I'm not too sure if they've maybe been granted it since, but I know they're
I know,
seeking
yeah.
that. But yeah, so that's another group out there. They're catering for other festivals. I think they're catering for some smaller festivals. I think more
They're catering,
psychedelic
yeah. This
orientated ones.
They still have two more that they'll be working at now. One this weekend in the UK, and then there'll be one at the end of September back in this country. So
Okay, cool.
those are two to look forward to if anyone wants to volunteer and get a taste for the festival scene. There's still two more to go. I guess this weekend's probably a bit late. It's probably already started, but
Yeah,
the one I think it's next weekend actually.
back here in Ireland. Do you know what one's that? Is it Lunasa or something like that, or
Um,
Fanac? So it's one of those Irish named ones, is it?
it's one, yeah, it's something on Squelga, all right.
Yeah, Oscar guy. Sorry, yeah.
I can't remember what the actual name of it was. It's
But
next weekend.
I suppose for yourself then as
Okay.
well. Did you have your eyes set for any others, or are you just going to stay focused on Electric Picnic and just get the service like in shape and before expanding?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I think like we could definitely do electric picnic again. I think we've proven that like to ourselves now for the third time. And there's ways in which we could improve it, and it could be improved upon. So if those like conditions can be met, we'd love to go back there and volunteer again. I think the volunteering aspect is important too, like
Mm-hmm.
for people's intentions to be there, like just pure and like just true. That's like just a nice kind of unique kind of position as well to have at the festival. Like we're not there for money, like whereas everybody else is there for money. Like it's just such a money grab, and that's
Mm-hmm.
all a kind of festival really. A lot of festivals really are like. It's a good production too, though. To be fair, it's a big production, so like it's one that I personally enjoy too. So I think I'd be very happy myself to go back there next year.
Excellent.
And if we focus on the trainings, I think that would only like serve to benefit us then. Like for any other kind of festivals outside of this, there's none that kind of come to my mind that we'd be kind of asked to do. So if we're not really asked to do something and someone else is filling that void, then I don't really believe why there'd be any reason to like get kind of expand on that. But that said, like just like 350 festivals every year in Ireland or so,
Yeah.
so like no one can do everything, and if we just do like kind of what we can deal with like capacity wise, then we'd be very, very happy as long as the quality is just like, very, very high.
Hmm.
That's what we'd kind of like try and aspire to, I suppose. And we got some things right and we got some things wrong this weekend. And I think we can only improve upon it. So for next year, I'd much prefer just to kind of like focus on those kind of things. Just like better equipment, better working conditions, better beds for service users. A lot of feedback there. Like hopefully, we get the buggy at the start of the festival, not at the end of the festival. But it's nice to get these. These are small victories, really, but they're they have kind of like large consequences then, like for next year, you'd hope.
Yeah.
So.
And another question I have, Graham, is a service like this. I know with the surrender bins and stuff like that, your man Frank Fien, the minister with responsibility for national drug strategy, was quoted in saying that he wants to see an expansion of those services into regular nightlife. So my question for you is, with the drug welfare, do you see that as something that maybe would be needed maybe in nightlife? Because I suppose I know we've often heard of talk about the need for a drunk tank in Ireland, in certain cities, in the A&Es at night time. Drunk people can become a problem for nurses, and they're drunk, they just need to sleep off the effects of the alcohol, but quite often they just get stuck in a thing. You don't see too often people with drugs, but I wonder if there was a service there for it, would there then be a demand there for it? People would be maybe at home and experiencing a problem, and there's a service they could now ring, and people can maybe call out and provide a mobile service and things. I don't know, just kind of just thinking and shooting around there. What do you think about that? Do you think that would be something that would be good in society?
Yeah, I think the mobile kind of services have a huge advantage that they can like move to where the problems kind of are and can hit kind of like key populations and help people out in those populations. Whereas like it's a mobile drug consumption van or unit, or whether it's like a mobile medical unit, or that's providing general healthcare to people who might be living rough or something like that, like in general communities. And that can only have a benefit then later, as you save money economically, you save pressure on the health system and on A&E and stuff. So you generally want people to kind of be out there, not just on the charity of themselves though, like through like it's like it should also be like a government intervention too. Like there's a duty there, I think, to take care of everybody in the country, like despite what like who they are, like everybody has these rights. And I just think welfare is one of them. I don't stop there though. Like I think like safe supply is another one. I really believe that. I really think that equal treatment goes across not just alcohol, or treating the people who are addicted to alcohol, but also people who use other drugs too. And like we provide alcohol treatment, and even that's kind of stigmatized, but like we don't do half of that for any other drugs. Like we literally don't supply it, and we certainly don't supply it, and we barely treat it. So a lot of these services that already exist, like they exclude people who are using drugs. They say like, you have to be clean, or you have to not be using. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do for any human being.
Yeah, it seems like all of the services are only focused on problematic drug users and never on the people who are just kind of using the drug, but just are experiencing, what would you call it, an acute problem. Or problems just arising there and then, but it's not a problem that they have persisting in their life. It's just because they got their dose wrong. They just messed up, or maybe their mindset was a bit off, and they're having a bit of an adverse reaction, but they're not a problematic drug user. They're not in need of any long-term service, but they're in need of something then, and they're in need of something that's non-judgmental as well. So I definitely would think it's something that would be beneficial in society, all right, but I suppose we're still a long way off it. But I definitely think that once we maybe see a more liberal society, then that maybe we might see these services then come in alongside it as a result, hopefully anyway, because I'd hate to see the fucking nurses and doctors having to deal with an influx of more people who are just experiencing an acute problem because of an overdose of a certain type of drug. I'm not talking about an overdose reaction, but in terms of just having a bit too much, whether it be MD or whether it be alcohol. Any other questions there now, Graham? No, I don't, but I just want to bring up, actually, the guys just mentioned there in the hot box, it was Fwynov the 17th of September that Psycare are going to be at, and Scatness, their staff, is giving a shout out to Mick and Kat for being legends. I think that's Mickus Dickus, is it?
Certainly is. Yeah, that Mickus Dickus.
That was hilarious in the chat, and he's like, is my name actually Mickus Dickus? How professional. It's hilarious.
I don't know how that happens.
It's the Monty Python reference anyway, for sure. Definitely. That's
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, come on, Graham, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. Is there anything you want to add? Anything you want to throw in there? Because I've exhausted all the questions I would like to get out there for you right now.
I think that's pretty much it. Like, yeah, hopefully people will volunteer at Psycare in 2 weeks' time. Next week, let me see, 17th is next weekend.
Excellent.
So go volunteer there, and yeah, like sign up on the form for next year. But unfortunately, the festival season's kind of like over now. But like get involved with the trainings. It's not just a 1 year like annual event. Like welfare is every day, drug policy is every day. Like get out in any kind of way, that capacity that you can. I know the colleges are back now, so that's like a great avenue for a lot of people. Some people aren't in college though, but there might still be a college campus or something like near you, and maybe there'll be people there that you can like meet up with or talk to or something like that, and try and get something, because like a lot of funding can come through that, and events can be done there. Venues are free, so like there's very little cost to like running these types of things, you know, and they often like pay for like conferences to attend different things, and that can be very beneficial for like young people trying to, especially people who are young in drug policy, trying to like learn a bit more, would be like join one of these societies, try and get funding that way. And like if you're not in campus, there's always like Patients for Safe Access or other groups as well that are well worth getting involved with. I know that like constantly take like work and stuff for people just to like take over tasks or whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's loads of ways to get involved, really, like, and loads of things to do between now and next year. But you know, that's unfortunately like all we're going to be doing for now is just that one electric picnic, and now we're just going to like just probably do maybe like 3 to 6 modules. So probably like maybe once every 2 months. If you can kind of aim something like that between now and next year, we'd be doing like an awful lot then, you know.
Excellent. I'm more than happy to provide the self-defense module again anyway. So
that was great. that one saved my life.
Scatness is also just mentioning there that the Psycare guys are actually fully booked for they've no more spots left in the volunteer team. So
it's next year. Yeah, like that's unfortunate. Like that's just the way it is. But
other groups out there that I'm aware of doing this like globally, we've Cosmicare. They're like Portugal, kind of Spain based. Kind of
Cosmicare. Yeah, close. Yeah, Iberia. So they're Portuguese.
Portugal.
And they do drug testing as well as like the general like crisis intervention and chill out tent, crash beds, that sort of stuff. But they take like it's a whole different festival as well. Like boom, like it's more like you're kind of Burning Man in Portugal, where you know drugs are obviously decriminalized. So like they're, you know, it's a different kind of scene, I suppose. And
I'd be very interested. I'd be very interested in actually getting to boom now that drugs have been decriminalized over there. I'd imagine it's much different, even though like I'm sure the availability of drugs was always quite high.
I mean, it's every 2 years, and it started in 98, I think.
98.
And drugs were decriminalized, 2001?
Yeah.
So there's probably only like 2 booms ever, and then drugs were decriminalized. So like, I think they kind of early on were able to do all of these things as soon as that festival set up. The laws just allowed it, and that's what they did. And now there's other festivals trying to do the same, but they don't have decriminalization. So it becomes very tricky then, with a tension between kind of health and justice, and you know, kind of everybody wants to own it, but no one wants to own it. You know, like everybody wants to own it and like have their say, but then when it actually comes to enforcing it, a lot of people just kind of take a hands-off approach, which is kind of a good thing as well. People could just kind of get out of the way sometimes, but like that said, there's still a duty there, I think, like to just do a bit more than
definitely
what we're doing. I think it's a good start with everything with the surrender bins. I'm happy with it. I can only be positive, and but like let's just like do a lot more next year if we can.
100%, yeah. And just other groups, I think in the UK it's also Psycare in the UK now. Chill Welfare are no longer providing drug welfare services, I don't think. But I think it's Psycare Ireland and Psycare UK. And then in
There's
America,
a few
for
others.
yeah, is there others in the UK you're aware of?
I think there's a couple of others, but
Don't know the
I
name.
do believe, yeah, that child welfare aren't doing as
Yeah.
many as they used to anyway.
Yeah, and over in the US, then the group I'm aware of providing over there is the Zendo project, I think, and DanSafe do drug
That's
testing, but I
it.
don't think they do drug welfare services, or maybe they
No,
have.
I think they do both actually.
Oh,
Yeah, I think they do both. And
excellent.
then there's energy control in Spain.
So Spain have another one, energy control.
Yeah.
Great.
And then there's some in Switzerland as well, Germany, Netherlands. It's kind of across the board almost, really, like in Europe and in Western Europe anyway.
Well, there you go, guys.
And
If you're out there and you're interested in volunteering, John, if maybe going away in a J1 to America, well, there you go, an opportunity to go volunteer with the Zendo Project or DanceSafe.
yeah,
They're great groups, and
that would be cool. Yeah.
and if you are in college, like Graham said, guys, get an SSCP going. I want to see more SSDPs across Ireland because they're an incredible resource for this campaign, for attacking the prohibition of drugs and just making a safer society for all of us.
Oh yeah, like I mean, SSBDP, like they did very good events there and keeping the pressure, like the last kind of election and with the new government coming in and stuff,
Yeah.
and they were doing like some really, really good stuff there. And then there was also Stephen as well doing stuff part of his college and his course with SSDP. You know, it was like good kind of like round of events there for a while. And I'd like to kind of like if that kind of motivation kept going now when it really does matter. And yeah, man, we have a lot to look forward to, I think.
Excellent. Graham, your websites, is Help No Harm active anymore, the website?
Helpnoharm.org, but it should just redirect you to our blog. So there you'll just find recent posts and photos and stuff from the last weekend now in particular, but also like we had like from Support Don't Punish events, from previous events, like Program for Government and stuff, different
Excellent.
podcasts that we had done. So that's kind of like where you can kind of check it out the most, or on Twitter as well.
Boom.
Help
And
My Harm IE.
is there a contact form through that then as well? Would people be able to find an email through that if they want to get in touch?
There's email there, support@helpnoharm.org.
Boom, there you go, guys. So if you want to learn more, if you want to get in touch, if you want to just submit your name and email for next year, you can never be too early on these things.
Absolutely.
Get in touch
Yeah,
with
we'd
them.
love to hear from all of you. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And
Excellent
yeah, thanks
stuff.
so Martin again, like for having me on tonight as well. You know, it's just like fucking smoking on, man. Fuck it. Like, we'll do it. It's like festival's over, it's come down. It's like,
The wind
gotta
down.
work, gotta work hard. And yeah, like that's kind of like the motivation of for the rest of the year is just like head down, just get it done, It'll be Christmas soon. We can all party again.
I know that's only around the corner. We won't be long when we get together again for that. But yeah, Graham, man, thanks very much, and to everybody else out there watching, guys, thanks very much for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Until next time.
Behave.
Bye, guys. Stay
See you
blessed out
later.
there, guys. Keep her lit.